I'm Bob Short. This is Reflections on Georgia Politics, sponsored by Young Harris College, the Richard B. Russell Library, and the University of Georgia. Our guest today is Bill Lee from Clayton County, Georgia, who served in the Georgia House of Representatives for 42 years. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Tell us about growing up in Clayton County.
Well, Robert, I grew up in a rural community. Had two brothers and two sisters, and a fine mother and father, and made it through school without too much difficulty, and went to work a little after right after graduating. I was drafted into the Navy and spent 3 years during World War II at the Naval Air Station at Jacksonville. Had very good duty down there. I gave some calisthenic classes in the morning and run the golf pro shop in the afternoon. So my tier of duty, I was available, but I did what I was told to do. But I had a good life growing up.
Mm-hmm. When did you get interested in politics?
When I was in, I think, when I graduated 11th grade, I served as a page up in the legislature. And Wayman Wells was a representative, and he asked me to help. I stayed a whole week, and I said, I like this place here. I'm going to set my little goal. I may want to come up here one of these days. That's why I went to the legislature. That plus, you got to love people. To be in politics, you got to like people. And I like people. And I know a lot of people. I've helped a lot of people, served a lot of people, and had been very fortunate to do that.
So when did you decide to run for the legislature?
Well, in I was elected in 1956. I decided a couple of years before that I was going to do this, and I made it my point to get there, and I got successful and got elected.
Well, back in those days, politicking was a little different, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, you'd go to the little stores, country stores, and sit around the potbelly stoves and tell stories, and I enjoyed meeting them kind of people. And if you get 2 or 3 people in one community, you all set, and that's the way I started out.
Well, you didn't have hired guns like James Carville or Mary Matlin back then, did you?
No, we didn't use them kind of people. We used our own little good judgment, what integrity we had, and a few friends to help us. Didn't need much money then to run.
What do you think about the expenses of running for public office today?
I think it's way out of reason. It's no semblance of fairness about that. It's terrible to raise that kind of money, and the system ought not to be working like that.
So you were elected in '56 and went to the General Assembly in '57.
1957. Yeah.
What was it like to be a freshman?
Yeah, well, a strange world. And I'll tell you, the first fellow that I met when I walked in that chamber, and I was naive as all get out, was Carl Sanders. He was a member of the Senate, and he came over there and he introduced himself to me, and he said, I want to welcome you. I've heard about you, I know about you. And I remember that very vividly, but I was told that I should keep my mouth shut, listen, and learn, and I did that for a while.
Well, 42 years, that's quite a while. I believe Marvin Griffin was the governor when you went there.
Yeah, Marvin was. I served 2 years during his administration, and also served in the House with his brother Cheney, who was a piece of work.
Do you remember the rural roads fight that Governor Griffin had with Lieutenant Governor Vanderbilt?
Yes, sir. I remember it very, very vividly. It was very bitter. I took the Vanderbilt side of that issue, and I'm glad I did, but I didn't make many friends on the other side doing that.
Looking back over your political career, you've had some opponents, but you've always come out victoriously on all of your races.
Yeah, well, people enjoyed running against me. They got a lot of encouragement. I was I was kind of part of the leadership up there, close to some of the people, and that they wanted to get me out, and they worked at it. But folks, true blue to me, and I survived a lot of elections, and I voluntarily retired in '88.
Did you ever consider running for another office?
No, sir, I never did. People tried to get me to run for Congress. I said, I don't want to run for Congress. People elected me to this office. I'm going to do it as long as they'll let me do it.
Now I'd like to talk about some specific historical events while you were there, those 42 years. Going back now to 1966, when the legislature elected Lester Maddox governor.
Yes, that was a right historical event. I guess the most historical of my tenure. We were faced with that challenge, and we did that at night where the world could see, and I voted for Lester, which my district went for him overwhelming when he was on the ballot and running. And of course he was elected, and I served 4 years with him as governor.
How did you find his administration?
Lester he kept the store pretty good. He didn't create any waves. He had some good advice, and he made some good appointments. And Lester did a whole lot better than I thought he was going to do to start with, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm.
Another historical event during that period was the legislative independence move that you fellows in the House created to get some power away from the governor.
Yeah, we talked to Governor Maddox about that and said it was time to do that, and he agreed, and we moved forward with that. The governors ran everything prior to that, and that was the best move the legislature made during my tenure, was get some independence up there, and it's worked pretty good. Of course, you still listen to the governor, he still makes recommendations, but we kind of do our own thing, do our own budgets and all of that, and the independence worked well for the people of Georgia.
Back in those days, the governor actually chose the speaker, appointed the committees.
Yeah, Governor Sanders gave me my first committee appointment. I said, thank you very much. It Industrial Relations Committee between Labor and Management. I said, I'm not sure about that committee, but I appreciate the chairmanship, but I didn't stay on that too long. But he actually did that. He elected, as you said, selected speaker and all the committee chairmen. That days are over. You have to earn those spots now.
Seniority
yes, sir.
Counts. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Let's talk for a minute about the speaker. You're probably the closest person I've ever known outside the family to Speaker Murphy.
Yes.
Y'all a good friend. Tell us about the speaker.
Tom Murphy was my dear friend, a very capable individual, a good lawyer, but his highest trait, as far as I'm concerned, was his honesty. I never doubted his integrity. He'd tell you like it is every time, and he wouldn't bat an eye. If you ask him, he'd tell you. He worked hard at that. He loved his state. He was a master at helping the underprivileged. That was his cup of tea. He wanted to help people that couldn't help themselves, and awfully good at that. And he run the House with an iron fist. The only way you can do it. Well, 179 people out there wanting your job, and he's tough in the trenches, but he was fair. And I say Tom Murphy is solid as Stone Mountain Granite. Mm-hmm. He just solid as it could be.
He was often criticized by the media. Did he deserve that criticism?
Well, no, he didn't deserve that criticism, but he wouldn't cater to him. He wouldn't suck up to him. He just kind of let them do their thing. He did his thing, but prior speakers always met with the press, and they would decide what you ought to do and all that. But he wasn't into that kind of bit. He served the House membership in the state of Georgia, and he wasn't interested in the news media telling him what to do.
Tell us how he became speaker.
Well, George Busby was running for speaker, and several of them. And as I recall, George Smith was speaker and died, and then Busby decided he was going to run for governor, and that left the opening for Murphy to get in the race and get elected. And the caucuses elect the speakers then and now. Democratic caucus, Republican caucus, they make the judgments who's going to. But the full House has to approve, but the caucuses control that, and that's why when Tom got elected, and he was awfully good for Georgia over the years. Mm-hmm.
He had opposition, as I recall, only on 2 occasions.
Yeah.
Al Burris.
Al Burris ran against him one time, and he beat Al pretty bad. And who was the other one, Bob? I don't remember.
DuBose Porter.
Did you both run against him?
Yeah.
I guess you're right. Yeah. He cleaned both of them to plow pretty good.
You actually came to the legislature before Murphy.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And
how did you meet him? How did you get friends with him?
Well, when he came there, he's kind of he's strong-willed individual, and he came there. He was very active as a freshman and all of that, and I just took a liking to him. He liked me, and we joined forces in a lot of things, and did that for a long, long time. I remember he was chairman of the Banks and Banking Committee, and had a front row seat. And Carl Sanders was governor, and Carl had put him in the banking seat, and he crossed Carl on some bill he was interested in. Carl removed him as chairman and moved him on the back row. And that's when we had 205 members, and you go way back under the upstairs balcony. But we just got 180 now. We don't have those seats anymore. But he busted him.
Well, Murphy was certainly the watchdog of the treasurer.
No question about it. Very conservative. He's liberal with some views when helping people, but he's very conservative with money and the budget and that kind of stuff. And he won every battle that he sought to take on up there in connection with protecting the interests of this state and conservatism. He's good at that.
Well, he spearheaded legislation for a lot of worthwhile projects like the World Congress Center.
Oh, yeah.
And MARTA, the Georgia Dome.
Yeah.
The Olympics.
Yeah. He was a master at picking issues that were important to the state, and he didn't lose. He wouldn't take an issue he didn't think he'd win, but he batted 100%. I tell you that, and I appreciate that because he had good vision for our state, and we all wanted to do good by our state. And he go down in history as one of the finest public servants we ever had in this state, in my opinion. Mm-hmm.
Well, you were a very close advisor. What did y'all talk about?
Talked about a lot of things. I used to tell him that dog's not going to hunt, Mr. Speaker. We ought not to do that. Well, what did he say that for? I said, well, yes. And he'd listen, and he said, then 2 or 3 days later, he said, you're right, we ain't going to do that. And I had that kind of dialogue with him, and he'd ask me, and frankly, I'd tell him like it is, and he appreciated that. He'd tell me like it is. He'd get on my case, and he called me up in the Rules Committee at times and say, look, put this bill on. I said, I ain't going to put that bill on. It's not ripe yet, Mr. Speaker. Well, he means it's not ripe. I said, it's not ripe yet. So we had that kind of dialogue. Mm-hmm.
Good. Let's talk then for a minute about that period when Tom Murphy was Speaker and Zell Miller was Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
A lot of fireworks.
Yeah. News media were fireworks primarily, but you know, at nighttime they get along pretty good, and the speaker get along good with Shirley Miller, and but the press kept saying, well, we got a big friction up here between the lieutenant governor and the speaker. And they did fuss a lot, but the final product was good for Georgia and good for both of them, and little dissension is good for the soul around up there. Yeah. Keep your attention span high.
Well, some people think that the conflicts they had often resulted in better legislation because members paid more attention to what they were doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. We, you know, Zell is very sharp. He served in a lot of places in this state before he got elected governor, and he had a feel for what's good for Georgia. And he and Murphy were strong-willed, and but they worked their differences out, and it's good for the state.
Yeah. They were a lot alike.
Oh yeah, stubborn. They're tough in the trenches. Yeah, they're tough.
Well, let's get back now to Bill Lee. You went to the legislature in 1957. What committees did you serve on early?
I was on the Industrial Relations Committee, I think Parks and Recreation maybe, and Transportation. But I moved up the ladder pretty good and wound up, when I retired, I was chairman of the House Rules Committee.
How long were you chairman of the Rules?
About 14 years, I think.
That's the most important.
Long enough to learn how to do it.
Yeah. How do you do it?
He say no. Make them laugh. We had fun every day. People come to the Rules Committee. I wouldn't believe how many come. You couldn't get them in. Couldn't get them in there. Come in there to see what was going to happen. And we got the job done, but we were at ease and made people feel good about themselves. And I never did. I wasn't nothing routine about the way I did that. That's the only way I could survive. I surprise them every day at what we were going to do. And, but in that job, some of that you don't need to send some of that stuff to the floor, and we didn't do it. And I led that effort, and they told me I was pretty good. I don't know, but people come in there to see what I was going to clown up every day.
Did you get much pressure as chairman?
Oh yeah, a lot of pressure. You just had to let that roll right off the top of your head. Yeah, get it from Senate. A lot of people influence. You get so many pieces of legislation. Everybody, so proud of their bill, and but some of that stuff didn't need to pass, and we didn't do it. And we have a whole lot more left over we put on.
Yeah. Let's tell the folks just for a minute what the Rules Committee's main responsibility is. That's the calendar.
That's setting the daily calendar, and for what the House is going to take up that day. Mm-hmm. And we meet every morning and set the calendar, and that's how the House operates. Do the same thing in the Senate, and of course, we got a lot of legislation referred up there. The Speaker would put a lot of legislation up there that he didn't think was good. We were a pretty good gatekeeper. That drawers full of stuff.
Bill, if you will, let's go back to 1962, another very historic period when the county unit system was abolished and the University of Georgia had been integrated, but we had that segregation issue. What was it like being in the legislature at that time?
A lot of tension. I recall when I went there, the blacks wasn't allowed even in the balcony to Georgia House, and but we worked through that. Most of us were bigger than the issue and wanted to do what is right, and it was tough at home dealing with that when your constituents, and but a majority of us felt like we ought to move on, and we We did. We got rid of that county unit system, and the state's better off about it. We got one man, one vote now, but it wasn't easy around the legislature. A lot of tension about segregation in the University of Georgia and those type things. But we survived, moved forward, and Georgia came out way ahead of some of these states that handled it differently.
I recall Governor Vanderveer appointed the Sibley Commission. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very effective commission. Good, solid people on it. And they did their job real well. And the legislature followed their blueprint.
That was George Busby, I believe, sponsored that legislation for the governor.
That is correct.
And he later became governor himself.
Right.
Let's talk a minute now about the abolishment of the county unit system. For the first time, I was alive then. for the first time within my memory, it sort of altered who would run. You had the country, you had the Talmadge people who always had a candidate. And in '62, it was Marvin Griffin. And then you had Carl Sanders, who was from an urban area.
Right.
And that county unit system, I would think, probably contributed more to his election than anything.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Bob. The old system, Gene Talmadge used to say he didn't want to run much anywhere where they had a streetcar or anything like that. He's a rural Georgia boy, and they prevailed for years. And rural Georgia still has a good bit of clout in the legislature, to be honest with you, this day. And that's okay. I mean, that part of Georgia needs people looking after their interests. But the county unit system wasn't fair, wasn't right, and we saw fit to get rid of it with the urging of the courts and others, to file a lot of suits and all that stuff. Yeah.
That led to the creation of a confederation of legislators that became the Urban Caucus.
Yeah.
Were you a member of the Urban Caucus?
Yes. I never did join. Well, I went to some of their meetings, but I wasn't an active member as Joe Mike Wilson started that from Marietta, and I was in a position I didn't need to be in many more caucuses. I need to be looking after my business, so I wasn't active in that, but I did go to a couple of their meetings, and they did some good, but that divided the House a little bit more than it should have. But there again, we overcame that.
Yeah. Now I understand they got a rural caucus.
Yeah,
and a black caucus.
Yeah, they got all kind of women's caucus.
Women's caucus.
They got a caucus for everything. Need them like we need a hole in our head.
You mentioned Joe Mack Wilson. As I recall, he was chairman of Ways and Means for a long time.
Yeah,
which is a tax type committee.
Joe Mack was a good member. But he wanted more in his share. I put it that way. but viable member of the legislature.
Let's talk for a minute about some of the other legislators with whom you served. Tell us some of them.
Bobby Hills, from Augusta, I believe it was Augusta, Savannah, one of the smartest individuals I served. He was a minority member of the legislature. Very good headed, but he's self-destructed with drugs and that kind of smart boy. George Budby, I served with him. He's a good guy. He got the Constitution changed where a governor could serve 2 terms, and he served 2 terms. Joe Frank Harris served with him. He's quiet but a good, humble servant. Larry Walker, strong. Denmark Gruber. Don't come any better than Denmark. Bless his heart, he's gone on to his reward. But greatest orator we ever had in the legislature. And there's just been so many good folks that I served with, both sides of the Senate and the House. And not very many places in Georgia I can't go and find somebody I've served with. Some of them gone on, but some still living.
When you first ran for office in 1956, did you think you would serve 42 years?
I didn't have any idea I could serve two, to be honest with you, but I was so naive about all that stuff, but it just fell in place. And Clayton County, where I lived then, is kept growing. I'd make one mad, I'd go find two to take up for him. And I had one little piece of philosophy during my life, and I literally did that. Tomorrow I would meet somebody I didn't know today. I did that all my tenure. I found somebody tomorrow that I didn't know today. And that helped me tremendously. I'd look them up, see them in a rest or something, I'd just tell them who I was. And that worked for me. Mm-hmm. But my tenure, I don't claim to be any expert. I don't claim to be a wonderful record. I do claim that I worked hard and I tried to serve my people. They proved because I let me serve 42 years. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have observed, and I know you know this, that all of Georgia's governors since 1948 have been from the legislature. Is it a benefit to have that experience?
Absolutely, absolutely. Legislative experience is you can't beat it. It's very, very helpful if anybody wants to run. Not even go to attorney general or anything. They just that experience is tough to come by, and it's good. And we've had some good governors during the year, and we'll have some more.
Mm-hmm. Well, come to think of it, one of those legislators became President of the United States.
Yeah, Mr. Carter. He was a reorganizer of state government, and we did some of the stuff he wanted, but not nearly all of it. He's a little overambitious about that, but he was at the right place at the right time, and he took some mighty good advice from people that knew what they were doing, and he prevailed. And he wasn't a very popular president. Times were tough then, interest rates and all that, but he got beat after one term. Mm-hmm. But he made it from Plains, Georgia.
Mm-hmm. There was quite a bit of feuding going on during that period between Governor Carter and Lieutenant Governor Maddox. Did that have any effect on the legislature?
Not really, not really. I think generally members of the legislature understood both personalities of both people and worked around that. Wasn't paying much attention to it.
Let's talk for a minute about George Busby. You served with him. He was on the Appropriations Committee, chairman, for a long time, and he made that decision, as you said, to run for governor instead of speaker. Did you think at that point he could win?
Well, I knew he had capabilities. I knew he had a good mind, but he was kind of, I had my doubts, to be honest with you, but he ran a good campaign, show horse. I'm a workhorse, not a show horse, and slogan worked well for him, and he had a lot of good help out of the legislature.
Right.
And if you get a lot of good help out of the legislature, you can win races. Right. There's people at grassroots. But I wasn't sure he was going to win, but he did, and I did all I could for him. And then, of course, he served 2 terms.
He had a very successful administration.
Ma'am, sir?
He had a very successful administration.
Yeah, very successful. He knew what he was doing. Yeah,
he was able to change the Constitution, which hadn't been done in years.
We did that. I was on the conference committee that adopted that new Constitution. One of the most time-consuming thing I was involved during my tenure, but tough to do, write a Constitution. Finally got it ratified.
He was also very effective in bringing trade to Georgia.
Oh yeah.
From, well, the Far East, really.
Yeah.
Japan, that area.
Brought a lot of stuff to Georgia, a lot of good industries.
Improved the banking system by making it possible for overseas owners of businesses in America to do their banking here.
Right.
And so, to me, the Georgia House of Representatives has been the heart of the Democratic Party in Georgia for many, many years. And I think that, I can look back at Speaker Murphy and you as being responsible for perhaps the election of George Busby and the election of Joe Frank Harris. And what has happened to the Democratic Party in Georgia?
Well, it's not what happened to the Democratic Party, it's what the Republicans do. They took the issues and run with them. And the Democrats, when I was there, we were the conservatives. And the Republicans were the liberals. And they reversed that on us. And diversity up there, caliber of the people running, Republicans had better candidates. And being quite candid with you. And we lost that leadership capacity. And going to get it back, though. It's moving that direction pretty fast. And I don't know how long it's going to take. This year's election, governor might help that.
Is there any individual in the Democratic Party that stands out to you as a leader that can bring the party back?
Yeah, well, Roy Barnes can. And he's running for governor.
You knew Roy, you served with Roy. What do you remember about him?
Intelligent, too impatient, or didn't take a lot of advice at times when he should have, and that kind of stuff. But Roy had a plan, and he got involved in way too many things that he could still have his way and get somebody else to do it. But he just wanted to work at it and be heard, and he got heard a little too much. It kind of hurt him politically, but he may make a comeback. I predict he might.
Let's talk about reapportionment. Your district was reapportioned several times, and I'm sure that brought a hardship on your campaigning.
Yeah. Well, we used to run countywide, and I had Clayton and Fed in one district, and we had 4 members, and then the court said we couldn't have multi-member districts, and I wound up the last district. I had a little small district, which I didn't like. I felt like I was a state representative, not a little district where they got ward politics.
Yeah.
But that's the way it finally worked out, to get one man, one vote. But reapportionment's tough, nasty. It's not a friendly atmosphere. It's not a winner. It's a loser. But necessary. When I went through about 4 of those, 5. But a lot of hard feelings. Some never got over the way when a fellow been there 10 years and you cut his seat out, he don't like you.
Most of the decisions regarding reapportionment in the early years were made by the federal courts. There's been a suggestion that perhaps it would be wise to have a reapportionment commission to do that every 10 years instead of having to go to the courts and then having to take it through the legislature. Is there any merit in that?
Courts have been too active in it, I think. That's people's business. And people ought to do it. Now, the commissioner of the legislature would be better. I don't have any hard feelings, strong feelings either way. But it's one of those necessary evils, and commission might work. We might ought to try it and see what that do. But the legislature's going to have the final say so.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you need another layer to mess with that or not.
All right. Now let's talk a little bit about how the legislature spends the state's money. the budget is always the number one agenda when the legislature meets.
Absolutely.
Explain some of that to us and tell us about the green door.
Well, budget is very vital, and all budgets has to originate in the House. That's in the Constitution, and it is up to the last 3 years, we've had good growth, been able to spend money pretty freely, and do a lot of things we ought to be doing for the people, using their money. But got tight lately, but it's in this. The budget starts out the first week, and it's one of the last things you do each 40-day session. Just takes that long to work through the process. A lot of people got different agendas about that. The lobbyists out there worry to death about the budget and their little pet projects and all that. But it's amazing you get through that. It really is. But the conservative approach that we used when I was there, we'd take the low estimate of the budget analysts every year. They'd give us a lower, what your revenue is going to be, a low figure, a middle figure, and a high figure. We'd take it low, being safe, and didn't overspend. Sometimes that had happened the last 3 or 4 years. It's got us in a bind, but that's the way we did it. We negotiated with the Senate and the House. A lot of that was newspaper stuff. We could work that stuff out. But just take a little time. We're in no hurry, and we got plenty of time. But the green door, I guess, was one of the most effective groups you could ever imagine. Very few on it. They made hard decisions. That's what prevailed in the budget. Mm-hmm. A lot of members didn't like that. I mean, wasn't want to because they wasn't in there. Mm-hmm. Did it in behind closed doors primarily, and press Hawkian. We let one in every once in a while and tell jokes, and we meet in another room. But budget's tough. It's hard to manage people's money. Mm-hmm. I think we did pretty good with it, really.
How did you get to be a member of the Green Door Committee?
The speaker selected those. Mm-hmm. He selected people willing to work, lazy, stay at night, midnight, all weekends, all that. It wasn't easy. I think I lived close to the Capitol when I was there, and I didn't worry about hotel room. I had one there once in a while, a week at a time. Maybe it was going to be there a lot at night, but I'd come home every night, and I was willing to work, do my thing, do my job, and that's helped me personally do a lot of the things I did. Mm-hmm. But I feel sorry the fellow lives way, way off and has to come to Atlanta and don't get to go home much on weekends during mm-hmm. some of the legislative sessions. Because mm-hmm. that budget takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And you learn a lot about state government.
Tell us about the budget conference committee. Did you ever serve on a conference committee with the budget?
Oh, one time. It was next to the last year I was there, I believe it was. Tom Buckle got sick, and I served. But Green Door was a budget committee. Conference committee would be meeting in this room. Green Door was in this room. And the conference he'd come in and say, well, we got this proposition, what do y'all want us to do with it? That was what that was. That's the way that worked.
Let's talk some more about some of the controversies that the legislature faced when you were there. One that comes to mind is Governor Zell Miller's flag controversy.
Yeah, Zell wanted to change the flag, and he gave it all American effort. In his State of the State that year, that was his speech, changing the flag. It's time to do it. Prior to that, he called a bunch, I guess it's probably 15 there, up to the Capitol, Senate and the House. I guess he thought that we were the leaders, and he sat on the back of his desk with his boots hanging off. And we didn't know why we was going there. He called me and said, the governor wants you to be at 10 o'clock. Okay, fine, I'll be there. And I said, what's it about? Well, we don't know. But we got there, and he had the chairman of the Republican Party and the chairman of the Democratic Party in there. So one thing we got to do in this state, change the flag. He's flipping his heels, he's hitting the back of that desk. I said, Governor, what if you don't fail? Well, we can't afford to fail. I said, pretty chancy. Gonna be tough. Well, we gotta try. And that's how that started. He introduced that bill. I had it up there in House Rules, and I had it up there when the session ended, when he wrote me a letter and said he'd count as good as I could and didn't have the vote. But he was sincere in that, it really was. After that, Roy got into it, and got it changed, and it's one of the things that hurt him politically, running for governor, but his second term. But that issue's put to rest now, I think. Oh, it has.
Getting back for a minute, something I failed to mention was about reapportionment was the addition of black members to the legislature. After that first reapportionment, I guess in 1962, Senator Johnson was elected and was the first black member since God knows when. You served with him?
Yeah, I served with him and Grace Hamilton over in the House. She was one of the fine lady, good member of the House, and we've had some very, very good black members of the Georgia legislature. Some not as good as others, but they've had their place. Some of them acted ugly, but very few. And but they're accepted there, and it's they're working. They're a viable part of it. Got a good numbers in there now.
Yeah, and there was no tension back then.
Well, little, not much. I mean, everybody knew that what's going to happen. We ought to go ahead and live with it. Not create any turmoil. No turmoil happen.
I recall one incident, the refusal of the legislature to seat Julian Bond.
Yeah, I was on the House Rules Committee when they did. He was making bad remarks, whatever, his temperament and conversations and his press releases, all anti-government, all anti-Georgia, and we made a mart out of him, but didn't seat him. But the courts finally seated him. It's tough.
Let's talk about the passage of Zell Miller's lottery legislation. That came through your Rules Committee.
Yeah. Yeah, there again, I told Zell when he wanted to vote in the House, I'd give it to him, and I did. And it passed by one vote in the House. And and I think that was my vote. These preachers had me locked down in Clayton County, and I met with them, and I kind of told them that I felt like I was denying the people the right to vote, and I probably ought to vote for that. And I got away with that pretty good, and I went up there and voted for it. And my vote was probably the one that carried this. So it got it, and it's a good thing for Georgia. It really is.
Yeah. The Hope Scholarship Program has been very successful.
Wonderful. Helped a lot of kids. Yeah. Helped educate many people.
You know, we spend a lot of money in Georgia on education.
A lot of it.
Are we getting our money's worth?
No, sir. We can do better. We can do better. And we've tried over the years, but quality of teachers is not as good as it ought to be honest with you. I think that's a weak point, weak link. We don't have the educators that's talented enough to teach our kids.
The lottery money also went for technical things such as computers and
Yeah.
There's some question as to whether or not that's beneficial to education, but it's there, and it comes from the lottery funds. I want to go back, Bill, if you will, and ask you this question. What changes, beneficial changes, have you observed in state government over the 42 years you served there?
Beneficial changes, right? Well, as far as the House is concerned, is technology. We created some good technology techniques around there. We created a press area and a press agent and telling people what's happening. Those kind of changes, progressive changes, and our state is we don't have many Georgians left. We got a lot of Georgians are outnumbered in this state, you know, and that's not all bad. But changes in Georgia have been unique, not too great of many changes, but we try to keep up with the times, and if we need to change something, we need to change our thinking. We did, like segregation. You know, we come along, got on the bus, and but Georgia is still a great state. It'll remain a great state, and I just hope we continue to have adequate leadership.
Back in 1962 or 63, when Carl Sanders was governor, he changed the structure of the highway department.
Right.
And now in modern times, they're changing it again.
Yeah.
You think we'll ever get it right?
No, sir. I don't. It's just, you can't get politics out of the DOT. You can't get politics out of it, and it's into everything. Education, whatever. Politics is part of it. The DOT board been doing mighty well, I think. Now, of course, Perdue got mad with him, and he wants to change it, but he didn't get what he wanted. He got a small little move, some planner over there that he can name, but it just compounds cost of government. That's agitating to me. It aggravates me.
Bill, how did your constituents feel about school integration?
Well, it was a mixed bag. We had some rabble-rousers upset, and I kind of knew where most of them were at that time for my district. Could get a good feel for, and the clear-thinking people were okay with that. They thought it was the right thing to do, and that was a real joy to me to be able to get through that. Mm-hmm.
How did you campaign? What were the issues in the your early part of your career besides racial matters?
Well, do what you can to help my county and my area, and look after us. Be responsible. And Lord, I worked at it like an all-American. You got to love people to fool with politics, and I was available to them. They knew that. They had a meeting somewhere. Billy was there, doing his part, community and whatever, and answering their questions. I never failed to answer a letter I got or return a phone call. How bad they may have been, I'd do that. And one letter I recall writing, some fellow was blistered me bad. And I wound up a letter. I said, it's nice people like you that make public service worthwhile. I remember that one.
I'd like to ask you, as you look back over your career, is there anything you'd have done differently?
Well, I'm not sure there were. I missed some votes that I probably ought to vote the other way, but at the time when you called on, sometimes you don't have much time to do research or find out how some of your folks might feel, but by and large, I'm sort of happy with my public service. It's long tenured, and I was able to meet my responsibilities, knowing what I was doing and how to get there to do it, and wasn't no spring training with me. We were hard at work, and I could come home and tell my people that we did this, we did that, we didn't do this, and be kind of acceptable. I don't know a whole lot I would want to change.
For a number of years, Clayton County had two of the most powerful members of the General Assembly. You as chairman of the Rules Committee, and Senator Starr, who, as I recall, was chairman of Appropriations.
Yeah.
Did you two work well together?
Very well together. Terrell and I, people tell you that we were strong and did more than we probably ought to have done for Clayton County, but we did it in good spirit, and we worked awfully good together. It's good to have him in the Senate. He's good to have me in the House. Mm-hmm. And when I left the House before Terrell left the Senate, and he struggled with that a little bit, and we lost him a week before last. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the projects in your district that you're most proud of? I know that you were very active in Clayton College.
Yeah. Terrell and I both. They give us credit for getting that here and getting it to 4-year status. And I was involved. A lot of good people involved in that, but we were at the right place, the right time, and put the right heat. George Simpson was the chancellor when that college was created. And we talked him into Regis putting it in Clayton County. He and his group wanted to put it where South Lake Mall is today. But we had a piece of property up in Mar across the railroad, beautiful piece of property. And I had a little old Mustang automobile. And I put old George in my Mustang, rode him across the dam, pretty dam, and that pretty property over there. He said, we'll put this over here. And that's the way it was. And then we had a hard time getting a 4-year status, but we had enough clout to get that done. And Clayton College has grown. It's huge. And week before last at their graduation, they gave Terrell and I an honorary doctor's degree in public service for our part in creating that thing. Because Terrell had passed away. They'd planned it a long time, but I went and got that. I'm right proud of that. It's hard for me to brag on myself, Bob. I let other people do that.
Well, it's like Dizzy Dean says, you ain't bragging if you done it.
Yeah, but I've had a fruitful, good career. Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing that you can look back on that you failed to do that you wish you'd done.
Well, there probably some things, but I just, off the top of my head, I can't come up with anything that I think that, it's been critical. It ought to have been done, but I just can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How would you like for Bill Lee to be remembered?
As a old country boy trying to get along with his fellow man.
Do you have any advice for youngsters today who are looking for careers as elected officials?
Like people, work hard, convince them that you can do the job better than anybody else, and if you're successful, don't let them down. Only thing you got in public life is integrity, and I think I wound up with some.
Well, Bill, it's been a pleasure having you. I'm sure we missed a lot of political history today in talking to you about that illustrious 42 years you served in the General Assembly. Can you think of anything else that we should talk about?
No, I really can't. At my age and status in life, I'm glad to be anywhere. And I went to a meeting. When you get out of office, you're not much. And I went to a meeting the other day, and pretty good meeting, pretty important meeting. Got invited, and they introduced a notaries before they did me. So you know I'm way down. So it's all over the old man.
Why did you decide not to run again?
My wife, I bought a lot from J.T. Williams, it's Eagle Landing, right after he started this facility. And I said that I like to play golf, and if I ever have to move, I'd want to move down here. And she decided that she's going to build a house, and and she built it, and I gave her an unlimited budget, and she exceeded that. And, but we got a house down here, and it's out of my district.
So you moved out of your district?
Yeah, I moved out of my district. I think I got elected one more time, maybe, but and I don't regret that. It's time for me to get out. Tom Murphy and I was going to quit at the same time, and we kind of pledged that to each other, and I told him I was going. He didn't believe I would. I said, "Yeah, I'm going." And he said, "Well, I may serve another term." But, I'm glad he did, but
You know, just to set the record straight, Murphy's 2 years past you tied y'all for the
4 years.
4 years, tied y'all for
Yeah,
the
we both have continuous 42 years served in the
continuous service. That's amazing.
House. It is.
Well, Bill, you've been a great public servant.
Well,
And I want to thank you
you're very charitable.
On behalf of Young Harris College and the Richard Russell Library and the University of Georgia for sharing your experiences with us.
I appreciate y'all coming down in doing this. Maybe my grandchildren could look at it.